Hello chess friends and welcome to Zarov's chess channel and welcome to our Garry Kasparov saga. So in this series we're following Garry Kasparov's life and his chess career from the year 1981 to 2000, and we're continuing now the series with our first game from the 1983 Candidates Tournament. So this 1983 Candidates has been really a great tournament. Viktor Korchnoi, Vasily Smyslov, Alexander Beliavsky, Eugenio Torre have played here in this great tournament. And it was a bracket system. Garry Kasparov started in the quarterfinals, then you have to move up into the semifinals and then into the finals. And in the quarterfinals, Garry met Alexander Beliavsky. Alexander Beliavsky was World Youth Chess Champion. He won the USSR Chess Championship 4 times. Great attacker. You see also in one game that I will show you in this Garry Kasparov series how he really outplayed Garry Kasparov with such a great attacking performance. So as I said, here Alexander Beliavsky really a great player. So they played many games, but in the end Garry Kasparov managed to get it through to the semifinals. So as I said, this is now first game. Alexander Beliavsky played here with the white pieces, and as usual we start round 1 and fight. So d4 played by Beliavsky, d5, c4, we have e6, knight to c3, and now c5, the Tarrasch defense. And the Tarrasch is sometimes really weird to play for black because you risk after c takes d4 and c takes d5 and e takes d5. This is now a messed up position sometimes for black, because after potential d takes c5, black risks this isolated pawn situation in the center, and it will happen in the continuation of the game. And I'm not sure how many great players can play with an isolated pawn. I think you should avoid it. Basically, you have to really play like a shark, like Garry Kasparov here, to make something happen. In the game, Garry, after the move knight to f3, played knight to c6, still common theory, and we have g3. It's really the best way to play the fianchetto here for white, because if you try e3, first of all, you block out your own bishop here. The Darksville bishop would be out of game, and after potential e3 and maybe c4, still white has troubles to develop the light square bishop with bishop to e2. It will be also normal line, it will be still main theory, but I simply don't like this position, simply getting pushed away by this pawn on c4. So that's why this fianchetto variation is perfectly fine. g3, we have knight to f6, bishop to g2, and now bishop to e7. Here Alexander Beliavsky castled, Garry Kasparov also castled, and now bishop to g5. This is still main theory, and now this bishop to g5 puts a little bit pressure on black, because you have to make now a decision. You have to play something like c takes d4 or c4 here. If you don't make that move, if you play, for instance, let's play a bad move, really a6, then you get d takes c5, and if you take here, you see the problems of the isolated pawn on d4, on d5, pardon me, bishop to f6 will happen, queen to f6, and now queen to d5. Even rook to c8 is here a possibility with a discovered attack on the bishop. So it will be, I think, a bad game here for black. So that's why after bishop to g5, Garry Kasparov didn't play the move c4, which would be also a normal theory of the Tarrasch defense. He played c takes d4. And now after knight to d4, we have reached now the position in which black has this isolated pawn, and the best way here for white is to proceed with the blockade against the isolated pawn. We are not allowing this pawn to move further. If the pawn comes here maybe on d4, then maybe even to d3, it could be a problematic position here for white. So best way, as I said, blocking system. So maybe here to put the knight, maybe support the knight, maybe with rook to d1, simply creating a powerful blockade, because you don't want to have your opponent advanced here on d4. So we have h6, bishop to e3. You may ask yourself the question: should we chase the knight with the bishop with knight to g4? It's not such a good idea, because you leave simply your protection of the d5 pawn, and now if you take the bishop, we still have opportunities to counterplay. Knight to e3 is not a good choice because you lose the knight, but you have some counterattacks with knight takes c6, again also with a counterattack on the queen. If black now plays b takes c6, you see still we can take the bishop, or we can take the knight. It's, I think, better here to take the knight with knight takes e3. Still we have a comfortable game. We have here an isolated pawn by black. We can attack it. So here in this position, if black now plays knight takes d1, then we have knight from d to e7 with a check. after king to h7, we'll simply also take the queen, and we're continuing now the game with one piece up, and I think it's game over here for black. So as I said, here in this position, if your opponent plays the move bishop to e3, don't chase the bishop. It's not such a powerful idea. So here, rook to e8, played by Garry Kasparov, of course, getting use of the semi-open file on the e file, and now he wants to play also bishop to f8, where the bishop will stay on a very active diagonal, but at least now the rook's activity has improved also on the e file. We have queen to a4, attacking the knight. If, for instance, black takes now the knight on d4, still we can recapture with the bishop, and still we continue with our blockade idea, again with rook to d1, rook to e1. This is a perfect position for white. The knight is on a natural square, the queen is out, we have the rook connection, the bishop is also on a very nice square, so it's a really good position here for white. So that's why Garry Kasparov keeps the tension around the d4 a little bit further. Here he plays bishop to d7. I think it's the best choice, and in this game it's really incredible that Garry Kasparov played the game without inaccuracies, zero blunders here in the game, and also zero mistakes. So you have this evaluation your progress. You can make that happen on Lichess. You see the game started here from the beginning, and it was the normal advantage that white has always, but now after a couple of moves you see Garry Kasparov simply improved the position of his pieces and really strike back with some great attacking formations. So bishop to d7, as said, was played. The idea is clear. We want to play a direct attack on the queen on a4. Here rook to d1, and we have now knight to b4. Here queen to b3, and now a5, played by Garry Kasparov, with ideas to make further progress here with a4 and a3. If you play a4, it's okay. Here maybe to create also blockade, stop the pawn, stop the a-pawn from progress, but still I think black has normal moves, rook to c8, simply getting use of the c file, and I think we should search now maybe here for an outpost of the knight, maybe knight to c4 or maybe knight to e4 here from black's perspective to cement the knight on this very, very weak square. So here rook to d2 was played by Alexander Beliavsky. We have a4 anyway by Garry Kasparov, queen to d1. Nice maneuver here by Beliavsky. Still he stays with this powerful blockade against this d5 pawn, and in the game a3 played by Garry. We have queen to b1 protecting the pawn, bishop to f8. This is a very, very nice move by Garry Kasparov. As I said, he stayed on this very active diagonal, but also liberated the file here for the rook. So b takes a3, we have rook takes a3, and now queen to b2, queen to a8. This is a great idea how to get the queen into the game, because the queen was a little bit stuck here. You basically don't have good squares to develop the queen. You cannot play queen to c7. Queen to e7 is also risky. If you play queen to c7, then you see knight to b5 will happen. If you try queen to b6, then you're getting in front of your opponent's bishop. That's also a bad choice. So the queen, you see how patient Garry Kasparov was with his queen. Now, after the move rook to a3, it was time to get this queen on the a file, where it of course creates this dangerous attack against this weak pawn on a2. So knight to b3, we have bishop to c6. You see, this is a perfect move. Pay good attention. This is really Alphazero stockfish play here by Garry Kasparov. He didn't play any inaccuracies here in the game, any mistakes, any blunders. Bishop to c6, bishop to d4. Of course, Alexander Beliavsky continues his blockade against his isolated pawn, but now comes really the critical moment of the game. Knight to e4, played by Garry Kasparov. And what should we do? We shouldn't allow, of course, this knight to stay here. First of all, it's a direct attack on the rook. The rook, if the rook moves to d1, then you see the pawn on a2 would be hanging. And the funny part here is that you should basically take out this knight with the bishop, and it's a risky choice. It's a risky choice for white to give up maybe the light square bishop in this stage of the game, because you don't want to have this light square weaknesses. Still, black will continue the game with the light square bishop, so there are maybe some tactical threats on light squares if you, for instance, give up the bishop for a knight. But believe me, here giving up the bishop for a knight is the best choice. So in the game, Beliavsky tried knight to e4, but that was the problem. Here you should play bishop takes e4, and after d takes e4, now bishop to e3 creates again a nice compact blockade here, and now we could proceed with rook to d1. the best way here maybe for white is to proceed queen to a6 and now rook to d1. Although we have several light square problems here, still this bishop on c6, it's blocked out by its own pawn on e4, and it could be a positional problem. Now white will find a way with this minor pieces into the game. Here knight to c5, here doubling up rooks maybe to d4, here attacking maybe even further the e4. So as I said, this was a tricky idea here by Garry Kasparov. After the move knight to e4, knight takes e4 will play, but now after d takes e4, you see what are the problems now, because here Garry Kasparov, after the move rook to a1, played bishop to d5, and the idea is clear. We want to play bishop takes b3. You see, you brought your opponent's bishop into the game. Now after bishop to d3, you would be forced to take with the pawn, and you have some tactical threats on the a file. Incredible stuff that you should really give up your bishop pair in this early stage of the game. So that's why this Garry Kasparov's game was really great, with a great attack. Bishop to d5. What should we do? Here queen to b1 was played. If you try, for instance, to play e3 here to cover everything, still I think we can now use this file, and this rook would be a little bit out of game. It cannot compete here with this rook on c8 on the c file, because the knight is very well placed. So you see, white's pieces are a little bit stuck here. They're a little bit too passive. In the game, queen to b1 was played by Beliavsky. Now we have b6. You cannot take the pawn. That's the problem. As said, bishop takes b3 will happen. You cannot make that happen. So that's why e3 had to be played here. Because even if you don't react here correctly, if you play something like h3 here, let's see a possible move, then you get e3. That's the main tactical threat that Garry Kasparov has prepared here. After e3, you are forced now to give up your light square bishop. After bishop to d5, knight to d5, and you see now we have still this e3 pawn covered. After f takes e3, knight to e3, bishop takes, and rook takes e3. Now maybe something like bishop to c5, rook takes b3 is also a nice position. So the evaluation is here completely winning for black. So that's why you see after the move b6, you have to play here the move e3, because the e3 by black is really serious threat. e3 played by finally by Beliavsky, and we have now knight to d3. So you see, you played e3, you protected something else, but now you created a new weakness in your position, and it's the weak square on d3. Now Garry Kasparov has this octopus knight on this very nice square. Now it is a really bad position here for white. So rook to d1, b5, simply pushing further. We have bishop to f1, and now b4, cementing further the position. You see, this bishop is protecting the b4 pawn. The knight is protecting the b4. The bishop is protecting this pawn. The pawn is protecting the knight on d3. So the position is so compact and so active by Garry Kasparov that I'm really don't see here good moves here from Beliavsky. In the game, he tried a desperate move, bishop takes d3, which he should have played, as I said, a couple of moves earlier, giving up the light square bishop for this very active knight. Now it's too late. After e takes d3, queen to d3, you see now this light square weaknesses in front of white king. They're simply too much to handle. Rook takes a2, we have rook takes a2, queen to a2, knight to c5, and now bishop to f3. Great move. Now, of course, what we want to do is bring the queen somehow here to h3 and deliver checkmate on g2. So in the game, rook to a1, we have queen to d5, queen to b3, trying to force the trades of queens to simplify the position. But of course, Garry Kasparov is not interested. He wants to deliver checkmate. Knight to d3, we have bishop to d6, knight to e1. Okay, what black wants to do is, of course, to fix somehow the position with a potential f3 move to kick away this very annoying bishop on f3. We have bishop to b7, rook to c1, queen to f5. Garry is trying to sneak in with queen to e4. In the game, rook to d1 was played, and now bishop to f8. Again, the same maneuver of the bishop, still, of course, opening the e file for the rook, but also have this very active diagonal, and also the protection of the pawn on b4. Here, believe me or not, but Alexander Beliavsky played the move queen to b1, and in this position he resigned. It's really incredible, because queen to d5 could be a possible continuation, and you see now you are forced now to play the move f3, and now I think black can play normal moves like rook to d8. You see you have some problems on the d file, with potential maybe bishop to c5 ideas, creating really some pressure around d4. the knight is always stuck to the defense of this f3. If you lose the f3, you will lose the game, and the problem is that black has also the pass pawn here, can simply move up here with this pawn. With this bishop, I think Garry Kasparov would find a way to really threaten here a potential promotion of the queen to b1, and where white would probably have to give up one minor piece or something, because all of these pieces by white are simply used only as defensive pieces. So great attack. As I said, this game was without inaccuracies, without mistakes or blunders by Garry Kasparov. Great Alphazero Stockfish 12 performance in 1983. Great attack by the beast from Baku. But we'll see also, as I said, in the continuation of this match game, how strong this guy Alexander Beliavsky is. In the next game, we'll show a winning game by Beliavsky. Great attack. I've never seen Garry Kasparov getting crushed like that, so be prepared. We'll have some dynamics in the continuation of our Garry Kasparov saga. So, okay, I hope that you enjoyed this game. I really enjoyed it a lot. Great repositions, great attacking formations played by Garry Kasparov. If you want to see more games by the beast from Baku, check out my Garry Kasparov saga. Here's the link. And if you want to see the best chess games of all time, check out my best chess games of all time series. Here's also the link. And if you like this content, you can also subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and chess is the best of